some are still struggling, and if you are, that's okay. That is okay. These are some sources that will help you with some of these texts. They just give you a little, extra help. It's like having a guide with you. Um, oh, sorry. Let me get you that code for Melody. Let me see if I can find that. Okay. For Melody, if you're trying to get back into Google Classroom, it's W46DHDV. So W46DHDV. Hopefully that will get you in. Anyway, so just a lot of helpful things that I think are going to be useful to you. I am not recommending, if you don't like some language, there is a site that I enjoy greatly called Thug Notes. And actually the gentleman that has put these together is a legitimate PhD in literature. And he has decided to give his own kind of take on just about every bit of literature and even some historical events from a very urban perspective. And it's delightful. But if that kind of thing is not your thing, then I'd steer clear. But I think it's fun. Did any of you have a chance to see that, and did you find that useful in any way? Oh, okay, good. It looks like we're good. Oh, good. So Mark's going to watch it. One other thing, I just want to remind you that right here, your literary autobiography, which is due on Monday, we're doing through Google Docs. And if you've never used Google Docs to create a paper, then you just click on the link here. You'll have two options. One is to add, and the other is to create. And just make sure you hit create. It will name your file for you and take you right in. If you've already been doing the work in Microsoft Word, that's okay, because you can take what you've done and you can copy and paste it right into Google Docs, and it will work great. This way, I can offer suggestions even as you go, if you would like, and I can see the process, and the process itself is kind of fun. Yes, one of the things that I did differently, the Faith and Mark are talking about with the with lecture question number 3, I made it so you can only see your own response. I did that on purpose. So that, because I was looking for some definite answers, some evidence that you had paid attention and done some reading, and that's the reason why. But the next one, there will be more response, and you can respond to each other. So I'm doing a little experimenting. So I hope that is clear. Sorry about that, Faith. I probably should have made that clear. Going back, and it's 5:31, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope everyone's had a good week, and I'm actually not alone. So some of our students have decided to pop in the office here and just listen to me talk to the computer. This is what it looks like. So, and I know Kevin had actually talked about doing that too. And here Alex is joining us. But I want to go right in because our time goes by so fast. And address a little bit more about Xenia. Xenia is so important to this story that you can't take it away as a vital aspect of how to understand the story. I think without a knowledge of Xenia, the idea of hospitality given to guests, even strangers in your house, is such a vital part that I'm not even sure you can really fully grasp the stories of the Old Testament, to a lesser degree the New Testament, in at all. Uh, Indeed, as Melody points out, books 13 to 16, which I have not asked you to read, but I'm hoping some of you will be so enamored with this work that you'll go on and read what becomes of Odysseus as he runs into the witch Cyclops, Calypso, as he is treated very kindly by the Ionians, and even as we see in his own house, the people of Ithaca are severely mistreating Penelope by taking advantage of her Xenia. We never doubt that Penelope is the utmost human being because of her Xenia. One of the questions I also asked, oh, thank you, and the swineherder. It's really interesting, and one of the things that gives evidence that Homer may have been from the working class people is that almost always when he depicts working people, swine herders and goat herders and farmers and such, they almost always have wonderful examples of Xenia. But it's often the powerful who do not. For example, Calypso. You could argue that Calypso takes him in, but won't let him go. One of the questions I asked is Circe, the witch Circe, a good example of Xenia? And you do have some time to answer that, but the answer to that is not a simple yes or no answer. I can just tell you that much. So it gives you a chance, because for sure, let's just say she starts off doing it rather poorly. But you could argue that she redeems herself. She does bring them in and turns them into animals. That's not a very nice way to treat your guests who are in desperation to turn them into animals. I've had guests come over who just turn themselves into animals, but in this case, she turns them into animals. But in the end, with a little coaxing from Zeus, she does let him go, and she does something more than just let him go. She helps him. She helps him build his boat again. She helps give him direction. And he asks her how to get back to Ithaca. Well, it turns out in the story, there's only one man in the entire world who has the knowledge of how to get back to Ithaca. Unfortunately, that man is dead. So what do you do in a mythic story when the only person who has the information you need is dead? Well, you go and you find him in the land of the dead. Exactly. You go to the underworld where the dead are. And that's what I would like to talk about today. I want to talk about the underworld. The underworld is a crucial aspect of the Greeks and later the Romans. And I think in some ways we get echoes of the Greeks and the Romans even in our own world today. I'm going to jump over, if I may, to the text here. I'm going to go over here. And I'm going to go right here. And I hope you can see that. This is actually from the Robert Fagles translation. And I'm actually going to jump up numbers, but we're in book 11. So if you have a different, I'm going to be in book 11. And he's going to go because he needs to find a blind prophet named Tiresias. Tiresias knows how to get there. And so they go into the underworld where all the dead people are. We sometimes call the place Hades. Hades is the king of the underworld. He's the god. He's one of the Olympian gods who gets the very unfortunate job of taking care of the dead. Now, in the Greek way of thinking, and this is a big deal, in the Greek way of thinking, whether or not you are good or bad, you go to the same place after you die. So if you are a good man, you're going to go to the underworld, to Hades. If you were a terrible man, you go to the same place. You carry, you don't really get much of a reward. The only thing you get to carry with you is a thing that the Greeks called your kleos. 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 You don't have the perfect word to translate that, but the best word in English is honor. You can bring your honor with you. And so when you go, no reward, there's no heaven, there's no hell, because it's not a horrible place to be, because you don't really remember much and don't feel much. And it's not a great place, but you do get to have your honor if you had it. And very much like taking your character with you. And that's it. And by honor, that means that the other people in the underworld recognize your honor. And that recognition is your reward. And if you're thinking, oh, that doesn't seem like much of a reward, that's the reason why the Romans, who stole pretty much everything from the Greeks in their mythology, decide that they need to separate the underworld and make it a little bit more pleasant. So as Joshua has just pointed out, there's Elysium, the island of the blessed, going all the way down into the very lower regions of torment. That's going to be later on, and the Romans are going to invent that. Because the Romans are going to find it insufferable that there would be a place and there's no reward or punishment. So they're going to begin to invent levels of heaven and levels of hell. This is where we're going to get, ultimately, the medieval Catholic and Christian notion of levels of heaven and levels of hell. You're not going to get it from the Bible, because it's not in the Bible anywhere, like as in Dante, but we're going to get it from the Romans. Remember, it is the Roman Catholic Church, and they borrow a great deal from the Romans, more than just that they're centered in Rome, but they take with them some of their mythology, and part of that is these levels of heaven and hell. But for the Greeks, no, you go to the same place. There's a lot of debate, by the way, about this, because it's not unlike the same thing that we sometimes see in the Old Testament, when the early books of the Old Testament refer to what do we call it? When they call the grave, it's my brain is not fully firing here today. Sheol, thank you, Mark. Sheol, when where you get a sense that some of the patriarchs like Abraham and Jacob and Isaac do not have a clear idea of a heaven or a hell. And so they are dealing with an idea that's a little more like the Greeks will have, a little more of an idea like they will get from the Sumerians or the Mesopotamians of Sheol, which is very much like Hades, where everyone just goes. It's a holding place for all who die. It's not going to be until later in Judaism that we began to get a reward and punishment as well. So we're watching the idea of the afterlife beginning to evolve in front of us, because it's not clear, because people aren't sure what happens. And it's never spelled out in the Bible until much later. Now, this idea of kleos is big when you read the Iliad. If you read the great epic poem, the Iliad, which is the poem before this, They are all fighting, these great heroes in this epic war, and they're fighting for their kleos, their honor. And honor doesn't come from winning. You don't get honor by winning. You get honor by showing yourself brave, by fighting for your city-state, by fighting for your family. And so in that story, someone like Achilles will kill Hector, but in the underworld, Hector has every bit as much of the honor and glory as Achilles does, maybe even arguably a little more, because Achilles is a whiner. Absolutely, Don Quixote is going to play on this a great deal, and I think in many ways make fun. I want to read just a little bit here from the Fagles translation. So if you don't have your book, just follow along actually on the screen, which actually might be the better way to do it. Anyway, so you're with me. So here we go, beginning book 11. And I don't know if you just want to watch on my screen, I can, but there at the beginning it says, "Now down we came to the ship at the water's edge. We hauled and launched her into the sunlit breakers first, stepped the mast in the black craft and set our sail, loaded the sheep aboard the ram and you, and then we ourselves embarked, streaming tears our hearts weighed down with anguish. But Circe, the awesome nymph with lovely braids, who speaks with human voice, sent us a hardy shipmate. Yes, a fresh following wind, ruffling up in our wake, bellying out our sail to drive our blue prow on. We, securing the running gear from stem to stern, sat back, while the wind and helmsman kept her true on course." So here we have the same Circe, who very unkindly had turned them into animals, or most of them, who had kept them against their will for several years, and now they're speaking of her in a loving way because she is treating them kindly and is fitting them their ship for this trip, and even provides some wind and a helmsman. So I'm going to go up a little further. Oh, sorry, you can't see that, can you? I apologize. I thought I hit share. I apologize. So they go in and they go to the underworld. And I'm going to jump to read just a couple of passages. And I'm going to jump all the way, which in your book, I believe, is page 177. I don't have the numbers on this, but on this page, it's about, a third or a quarter to a third of the way. He goes into the underworld. He runs into, of course, a lot of his friends from the war at Troy, but he also finds some people that he's surprised to see, like his mother. He thinks his mother's still alive. He doesn't realize that she's dead, and there she is. So here, Odysseus talking, says, "But look, the ghost of my mother came. My mother dead and gone now, Anticlea, daughter of that great heart Autolycus, whom I had left alive when I sailed for sacred Troy. I broke into tears to see her there, but filled with pity, even throbbing with grief, I would not let her ghost approach the blood till I had questioned Tiresias myself." See, he's carrying a lamb with him, a ram, and the way the mythology works is when you're in the underworld, you bring with you a ram. Not only is that, of course, you're bringing a gift, but the way the story goes, that in the underworld, if one of the spirits, one of the dead spirits, could taste blood, real blood, then for a short while, they would have the memory of their life. They would remember their life. They would remember its pain, its wisdom, because right now, everything's a blur. Everything's been numbed. They have drunk from the river Lethe, and which has taken away all the pain. They're not suffering by any means. So even there, he says, "I got to keep moving." He jumps and he finds at last, Tiresias, the blind prophet. But I'm going to jump way ahead here. Jump. I would love you to read this. It's a wonderful romp through a lot of the significant characters of the Iliad, of mythology. And then at last, there towards the end, he's going to run into probably the most famous of all the Greeks, and that would be Achilles. Achilles is the great example of someone who went to the underworld with so much chaos. So I'm on page 190. So if you have your book, it's on page 190. And so he's been meeting all these people. They seem rather sad, and that's surprising to Odysseus because they had so much honor. And here at last he comes to Achilles, the great, great warrior, the ultimate in chaos, the ultimate in honor. And the voice of his spirit pause, and just right there, second full paragraph or stanza. And I was quick to answer, Achilles, son of Peleus, greatest of the Achaeans, which would be the Greeks. The Greeks would not think of themselves as Greeks, but as Achaeans. I had to consult Tiresias, driven here by hopes he would help me journey home to rocky Ithaca. Never yet have I neared Achaea, never once set foot on native ground. My life is endless trouble. So poor Odysseus, he's like, man, it's been a long time and I still haven't gotten home. Then he says, but you, Achilles, there's not a man in the world more blessed than you. There never has been, never will be one. Time was when you were alive. We Argives honored you as a god. And indeed, Achilles is mostly god, but there was one part of him that was mortal, and that was his heel, which is where Paris will pierce him and kill him. We honored you as a god, and now down here I see you lorded over the dead in all your power. So grieve no more at dying, great Achilles. So he's saying, come on, Achilles, stop griping. You have so much honor. Why are you griping about being dead? I reassured the ghost, but he broke out, protesting. And this is the big moment. Okay, this is a moment of such significance, and that is because if the Iliad and the Odyssey have the same author, well, then this is truly a wonderful moment. But even if they don't, it's a wonderful moment where the Odyssey is itself a kind of deconstruction of the Iliad. Everything that brings about glory and honor in the Iliad is deconstructed here and even mocked. That there is something greater even than honor, and that would be Xenia, hospitality. I reassured the ghost, but he broke out protesting. And here's Achilles now. Now notice, this is so different from anything anyone would have said at the Trojan War. No winning words about death to me, shining Odysseus. By God, I'd rather slave on earth for another man, some dirt-poor tenant farmer who scrapes to keep alive, than rule down here over all the breathless dead. Think about that for a moment. Here is the great Achilles. He has honor and glory, saying, I would rather have no honor. I would rather be the slave of a dirt-poor farmer and still be alive than to have all the honor in the world and be here. But come, tell me the news about my gallant son. Did he make his way to the wars? Did the boy become a champion, yes or no? Tell me of noble Peleus. Any word you've heard? And he's going to go on and ask for some word, almost like, give me the gossip of what's going on. And Odysseus is going to try so hard to give him some courage, but Achilles will have none of it. One of the things I have often wondered, and I think it's a significant question. Again, we've talked a lot about how people's stories that they tell, that they tell each other, that they grew up on, shape who we are and what's important to us. Perhaps every bit as important, our view of what happens to us after we die affects how we live this life. So if you believe that there is nothing more to life than this, but you do get to go to some holding tank that we call the netherworld or the underworld or Hades, and you get to carry with you some honor, well then honor is going to be of utmost importance to you. If you believe that there is nothing after you die, that's also going to affect how you live. But if you believe that there is punishment for the wicked, that there is levels of punishment for the wicked, as the Romans will say, and medieval Christians will argue, or that there are even levels of bliss, as the Romans will argue, and later medieval Christians will argue. The Protestants will reject these, but then that affects how you live. Like, I'm just kind of curious. I know we're not supposed to say that we live our life in any way to get to heaven. I would say we would always say, well, I don't do that. But isn't it kind of true that our lives are lived differently because of what we believe comes next? Mark thinks so. Anyone else? What do you think? Chloe thinks yes. Absolutely. Anyone else? Yes, for sure. I know I have many friends who are atheists who do not believe in a God at all, who believe that once we die, that's it. And they have managed to live, they managed to live very noble lives. They live wonderful lives. All the ones I know are quite decent people. They don't go and turn out to be serial killers, because what's the point of living? But there's a sadness when we come to the end. The other thing, of course, is how we treat the dead. It's very important for the Greeks that you treat your comrades, your brothers and sisters, to an excellent funeral. One of his shipmates is there waiting for him still to have a funeral rite. He's like, I can't have the honor that's mine until you go back to Circe's island. He'd fallen off the roof. He was drunk. And until you have a proper ceremony for me, have me burnt in my honor on my armor, I don't get to have my honor. This is a big deal. So if honor is the only thing you take with you, and part of that honor requires a great funeral, then you're going to have great funerals. If you believe that this world is just, step one and we're going to go home afterwards, funerals can be joyful things. I've been to many funerals that really were joyful things because we knew we were to see them again. My dad passed away a little over a year ago, and I was very sad, but his memorial service was very happy, because we know, we felt such confidence that we'll see him again. That would be also a wonderful paper. If you're looking for still another idea for a paper, and that is the stories we tell ourselves about the afterlife. These things shape our lives. I think I just think that we're affected by that more than we realize. When you look at cultures even who still live today, who are very superstitious about the dead, and that's often because of what they believe becomes of the dead, that they become ghosts. Mark has brought up a great point about this is interesting considering the U.S. military stance of leaving no one behind, dead or alive. This is an idea, this is such an old military sense of honor, that soldiers do not leave someone behind, and that we give them a proper burial. And there, if you've ever been to a military funeral, it's one of great pomp and again, my dad, he had one of those, and they fired the guns, and it was really powerful. And I think this is again an echo of centuries, if not millennia, of soldiers finding some comfort in that kind of honor. I would argue that today's soldier finds comfort in it for the living, not so much in trying to give comfort to the dead. I don't think that anyone who was involved in that service for my dad thought, boy, my dad's really going to like this. This is good for my dad. I think they did it for themselves, and it reminds them this is where our honor is. And anyway, that would be a wonderful paper. Some of you come from other cultures. Some of you come from not Western traditions, but Eastern traditions. And it'd be interesting for you to talk a little bit about how the idea of life after death figures into how we view the world. I am thoroughly fascinated, again, going back to the underworld as well, that in almost every myth, it doesn't matter whether it's the Iliad, the Odyssey, we're going to find it even in the Christian myths like Paradise Lost. Obviously, it's the main part of the first third of Dante. Even in contemporary epic poems and myths, we have these moments of Pilgrim's Progress, thank you, where you go to the underworld. There's this point where we believe in this epic story of all great heroes that they must at some point pass through the underworld, the land of the dead. It happens, of course, in Lord of the Rings. There's a pivotal moment when Strider or what is his name? King in Return of the King. I know someone will come. Aragorn, thank you. The Aragorn, and he takes his buddies with him, Gimli and I don't really can name these off, but it's just had that kind of day. And Legolas, thank you. They go actually into a land of the dead. This is not an accident on the part of Tolkien. He's fully aware of what he's doing. He's taking his hero, knowing that in order for him to achieve his kingship, he needs to pass through the land of the dead. They're very much part of the monomyth as well. I think in one of the things that's also that I love, I didn't plan to talk about this, but I'm a big fan of reading the Christian mystics, like St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, a lot of these great mystics. And St. John of the Cross has the famous expression, the dark night of the soul, that each one of us in our epic story may not literally go to where the dead are, but we go into our own personal dark night of the soul, which is our own underworld, where we begin to delve into our own subconscious, even before you would have known to call it that, our own inner demons. If any of you have ever gone through therapy, what is therapy but an invitation to go in and go into your own personal underworld? And you come out the other side stronger, ready to face the last battle. That would also be a wonderful paper exploring how great heroes, almost every great hero has this moment. I would even say that when you look at Jesus, he goes through a kind of underworld experience. Some would argue that that is when he's in the grave. I think Jesus's great underworld experience moment is the Garden of Gethsemane. If there is a pivotal moment in the gospel where things really hang in the balance, it's not on the cross. Because by that point, Jesus has made up his mind what he's going to do. The real pivotal moment is at Gethsemane. That's where things are hanging in the balance. And this is that moment where Jesus truly is in the dark night of the soul. He's in the underworld. This is his moment of delving into this dark place. And that's the moment, of course, where he's terrified, genuinely terrified, but still chooses to go on and face the last battle alone. I think that's part of the power of that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about, something about that's going to give away the story. But I wish there was a way, and this is one of the regrets I have about this format, because normally I would do this as a kind of discussion, but I would like you to do it with your group chat, I mean, there on the side. And I would love to hear you discuss about the idea of the difference in how we view Penelope as opposed to Odysseus. Notice how Odysseus, he spent several years in the bed of Circe. He's going to spend an awful lot of years in the bed of Calypso. And yes, he does use the excuse of, but I was thinking of Penelope the whole time. I'm sure Penelope would love that. Yeah, honey, I was blinking all these goddesses, but I thought of you the whole time. Yeah, I'm sure she's going to buy that. And yet, and I haven't asked you to read this far, but what's the thing that Odysseus is most afraid of about Penelope, once he finds out she's alive, is has she been faithful to him? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You've been gone for 20 years, and you haven't been faithful. Why do you expect that of her? Why do you think this is? I'm just curious. Maybe everybody, feel free to pop in on this one. Why do we expect chastity from women and not from men? Is it because we have low expectations of men? Yeah, I agree with Mark. I've heard this thought process from lots of guys, to be honest, where they're like, I've been playing around, but don't you dare play around. Yes, I've seen that happen many times. Yes, Melody who's read, I think, towards the end, notices that the marriage bed that Odysseus has made for them is made at the base and actually as part of a tree. Kevin wonders if it's part of our evolutionary programming to mix the gene pool. It's possible. That's what Carl Jung would argue, is that, well, men just need to spread their seed, and so they can't help themselves, and women need to protect the seed, and so they tend to be, a little less. Well, I don't know. You read my thoughts, you kind of know where I'm going. Mark notes that you've asked some of these guys, and they never seem to have a good answer. Megan says, I don't know. Maybe that women are held to a higher standard. It can be totally unfair. I mean, is that it? Are women actually held to a higher standard? Maybe have we given up on men as being moral? Like boys, we always say boys will be boys. And maybe that's the case. Maybe men are just insecure. Maybe they're just horny. Women have for many years been considered property, and that maybe carries up. That is true too. I knew those things would be worth exploring. That would be for wonderful stories. But I would agree with Melody that women have every bit as much capacity for desire as do men. And understand it very fully. I think we indirectly actually downplay women in this way by treating them with these kinds of expectations. I think we do men a disservice by giving them such low expectations, and we do women a disservice by imagining that they do not have these designs, neither of which is truthful. and absolutely. Um, One last thing I'd like to just get to with the Odyssey is, and I'm gonna give you a little spoiler, and that is everybody who everybody who is helping Odysseus, all of his men, every single one of them is going to die, except for him. So every single member of Odysseus's crew will be dead before this terrible trip is over. Only he will make it. And this has led a lot of scholars to wonder, wow, what are we to make of that? It seems almost like it actually hurt them in some ways to be helpful to them. But there's that would be an interesting thing to consider. But I love poetry, as anyone who knows me knows I love poetry. And Odysseus is going to get home. Actually, in the Latin versions of the translations, Odysseus is translated Ulysses. So anytime you see the word Ulysses, like as in Ulysses S. Grant, that means his name is Odysseus. So we had a president whose name came after the Odyssey. And and actually that was in some ways maybe an accurate description of him, because he was a warrior, he was clever. But one of my favorite poets, the Victorian poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, wrote what I think is one of the greatest poems ever. And it's a poem in which he puts into the mouth of the speaker words that he imagines Odysseus saying as an old man. Odysseus is going to get home. He's going to manage to finally get past Circe. He's going to get through the underworld. He's going to get through Scylla and Charybdis. He's going to, thanks to the generosity of the Achaeans and the Aeaeans, they're going to get him home. And I would like very much to read this poem aloud. So if you will allow me to, I want to read this poem. I wonder if I can make it slightly bigger so you can see it on your screen. Can you all see that? Let me know if you can see that. Okay. I want you to follow along with me. This is Ulysses, okay? Remember, he's gone through 10 years of battle, the single greatest battle of history, mythologically. He's gone through 10 years of trying to get home, the greatest sea voyage in history, mythologically. And Tennyson imagined him an old man. I love this poem because I think I'm getting to be an old man, looking back on my adventures, and I think I like it for that reason. And he's a little flowery, so I'll stop once in a while and explain, but I'm just going to read it because, by gum, I'm the teacher and I can. So here it goes. Ulysses. It little profits that an idle king by this still hearth among these barren crags, matched with an aged wife, I meet and dole unequal laws into a savage race, that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me. In other words, what am I getting here? I'm an old idle king, and I'm bored out of my mind, and I'm with an old wife, and I'm making laws, and nobody knows who I am, and I'm bored out of my mind. I cannot rest from travel. I would drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those who loved me and alone on shore, and when through scudding drifts the rainy Hyades becks the dim sea. I have become a name. In other words, I'm famous now. I mean, I'm just not just a person, I'm a name. For always roaming with a hungry heart, much have I seen and known. cities of men and manners, climates, councils, government, myself not least, but honored of them all. In other words, man, I've lived a full life. I'm honored. People know who I am. I'm going to jump up here. Right about here. And drunk delight of battle with my peers, far on the ringing plains of windy Troy, and part of all that I have met, which is true. I say that as an old man, that everything I've experienced, that's now a part of me. Yet all experience is an arch wherethrough gleams that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and ever when I move. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rust unburnished, not to shine in use. As though to breathe were life. In other words, man, look at all these dull people that go into life as if to breathe is to live. Life piled on life, we're all too little, and of one to me little remains. But every hour is saved from that eternal silence, something more, bringer of new things, and vile it were for some 3 suns to store and hoard myself, and this gray spirit yearning and desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Oh, now he gets good. So in other words, he finally just said, I'm bored out of my mind. So here he goes. Now he's going to explain what he's going to do. Here we go. This is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the scepter in the isle. So here's my son Telemachus. He's king. Well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labor, by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. In other words, here's my son, people like him, he's well loved, and he'll be a good king. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail, in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I'm work. Right? In other words, he's going to take care of my work, but I've got my work to do. Now here's what he's going to say. There lies the port. The vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. He sees like thinking, I've got an adventure left in me. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note, may yet be done. Not unbecoming men that strove with gods. Yeah, I'm so glad for this poem because it's basically saying I may be old, but hey, I've got one more battle in me. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes. The slow moon climbs. The deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. Because I'm out for adventure till I'm dead. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down, but maybe we will touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. So in other words, we might drown, or we might end up finding our way to where Achilles is, which is the underworld. Though much is taken, much abides. And though, I love this line, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Love that. That gets me so excited where he's kind of inspiring a one last adventure. Like don't be, we've experienced so much. We've got an adventure left in us. And I know most of you are young, but I love this. Take that, the old Odysseus' calling that just says it's, you could still drink life to the lees, and and though right now you're not maybe of the strength you used to be when you were even younger, but you could still be strong in will, you could still strive and seek and find and knock. These are beautiful lines that sometimes will pop up into pop culture. I'm so glad Mark pointed out that this happens a lot, and where we're moved by old heroes and their stories. I don't know if any of you saw the last the Logan with basically the old Wolverine. Wonderful example of like they still have another adventure. I don't know if any of you saw Mr. Holmes with Ian McKellen, where he plays an old Sherlock Holmes on One More Adventure. I would love to see like someone like Sean Connery come out of retirement and play an old, really old James Bond. I think that would be great. We like to think that adventure is only for the young, and right, that's the movie The Rock, indeed. But I mean, like, I would love to see him really old, kind of more like along the lines of the Sherlock Holmes. And anyway, it's a beautiful poem, and there are a few works of art and poetry. I mean, few things like the Odyssey that have inspired more works of art and poetry. And if any of you are poets, that could be a fun project later on, because I'm going to give you a creative project. Does anyone have any last questions I could answer? Maybe about the paper, because your paper was due Monday. Anything on Google Classroom, or even questions about the Odyssey. There's so much I want to say about it, and I may say more on Monday. So I'll probably spend half the time finishing up the Odyssey, but then I'm asking you over the weekend to read the play Oedipus Rex, or Oedipus Rex. And it is a play. It is not actually meant to be read. It's meant to be watched. And I'm going to post in Google Classroom at least one rendering of the play. So if you're thinking, oh, please don't make us read over the weekend, then I've got a better idea. You can watch the play. And I haven't seen that one, Melody. The version in the bandwagon. I don't think I've seen that. The version that I'm going to show you for sure is a version where they use the actual masks of the Greeks, and it's actually a little creepy and wonderful. And then I have another one that I think I can get uploaded for you. But either way, it's much shorter than the Odyssey, and it's a fascinating myth that he's telling. But if you have not finished the Epic of What I've Asked, I would like you to do that. I'm going to have a few questions based on the lecture and about the play, and I would like you to answer those. And any other questions? So Chloe's asking, so the paper is open-ended on what stories we can write on for paper one. Say something Disney related. I feel like we touched on that in the first class, but I just wanted to make sure. Absolutely you can. What I would say, if you want to pull on a Disney story, is tie it perhaps though to something that is relevant to the class, either to Campbell's The Hero's Journey. Certainly Disney's Hercules would be wonderful. Maybe tie it even into mythology. A lot of Disney stories have a kind of mythic quality that we see in the Greeks as well. So I want it to be, so if you can take a Disney story, but also apply it, add in and apply the things that we have either talked about, discussed, or read in the class, then yes, I would accept that. Absolutely. I want it to be something that's fun. And if you have questions, if you're not sure if you're doing it right, work on it there in the Google Docs. And you can even just send me an email or send me a text and just say, hey, Mike, I would love it if you take a look at my paper and tell me what you think. Am I on the right track? And I'll give you my opinion. So, any other questions? I'm going to take it that means no. I have one other thing I was hoping to get in, but it was going to take too long to get to, so I'm going to save it for the very first part of Monday, just to wrap up the Odyssey. I ended up reading this poem, which ended up taking our time, but I couldn't help it. It was so beautiful. And anyway, so please visit Google Classroom every day. Look at some of the things I post, questions I may have, and be working on your paper. I'm very excited to see that. If you need to talk to me, I've given you my phone number. You can text me. I'm on campus quite often. We could arrange to even meet if you need. Anyway, so I hope you have a great evening. And I know that we're just a couple of minutes early. I doubt anyone's going to scream bloody murder if we end a little early. So anyway, have a wonderful day. I will see you later. All right.